All right.
All right. I don't see the red live button. Is that different now?
It's
Showing
showing
on
for
mine.
me.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I will assume that we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Policy and Projects Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. Happy New Year. So pull up the agenda. And this is an hour and 15-minute meeting today. So we started making things a little bit longer, and thank you all for your flexibility about scheduling this meeting. We'll be back onto our regular Wednesdays next month. So we'll have the call to order. And I did just now link the minutes from our December meeting. I'm so sorry I did not include that earlier. We'll talk about, T-SPLOST and Complete Streets policy again. This is from last month, but our main focus today is this is not necessarily bike lane ordinances, but actually just bike ordinances in general. So continuing where we left off there and looking at the spreadsheet of bike laws that Cole had put together, and then I believe Mark had allowed us to have ranking there. And I included some links that Daniel had passed along from the League of American Bicyclists just as references. I need to, I'll change that. Um, any additions or changes to the agenda? Is there anything I left off?
Let's see.
All right.
I don't think
So
so.
we'll go ahead and look at our minutes from December that Aaron took and provided with us, and it's actually on the third page. Because of the conversion to Drive, for some reason, I could not get this page here to move up. It's not doing it. It just doesn't want to. So these are our minutes. I'll give y'all a second to review those again, and we thank you, Aaron, for getting those to us right after that meeting. Any additions, corrections to the minutes from our December meeting? I know it's been a while. All right, if there are none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, I heard a second from Taylor. Who was our first?
Oh, I was so moved.
Oh,
Somebody
okay.
wants to say.
I move, sorry. Move to approve. Made a
Okay.
motion to approve.
Okay, so Aaron made a motion. We have a second from Taylor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right. So next item on the agenda is I would like for someone to volunteer to take our minutes for this meeting. And again, you can start with the agenda that we have and just record action items. Is there anyone who would be willing to do that?
I'll do that.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks,
No
Taylor.
problem.
Appreciate that. Okay. Moving on to status on other items like T-SPLOST and Complete Streets policy. So where we are with T-SPLOST is the T-SPLOST Advisory Committee has held both of their public forums. And then there were two public input sessions for the mayor and commission. I did not get a chance to see the most recent one that was on Tuesday. And so now it's up to the mayor and commission to finalize their list of transportation projects and make a formal call for the referendum no later than February 15th. And I've talked with the SPLOST office and they have no room to budge for that date. So we should hear something soon. I haven't had a check to haven't had a chance to check in with any commissioners to see what they're thinking since the last meeting that I presented to them as part of the advisory committee. So I know they're trying to get pavement maintenance on there. Daniel, have you heard anything new in that regard about the pavement maintenance? I know that there were some absolute minimum numbers put out there.
Um, The only thing I've heard as far as pavement maintenance goes is just our schedule for 2022.
Okay.
So I don't, we're still kind of just waiting to see what happens with the mayor and commission and their whether it makes it into C plus 23 or not. I think 22 is paid for out of the 2018 still.
Right.
So
Right.
we're just moving forward with that.
Okay. So some things that might come out of the mayor and commission's the mayor and commission as they decide as they get the final list together, there's a potential that they combine some things into groups of projects. So y'all, we have submitted, the Lexington Road multi-use path, and then improvements for Atlanta Highway, and they're thinking about having sort of a corridor bucket. That's one idea that's been thrown around. I don't know if that's still out there. Um, so we'll see. They have their plate pretty full right now. And then there's a lot of uncertainty with regard to the district maps as presented by our state delegation. So I think that that's kind of filling their heads right now. Yeah, I know, right, Aaron? I see you shaking your head. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, wasn't able to attend Denson's meeting yesterday. Unfortunately, I was down in Waynesboro, but
Mm-hmm.
I was interested to see how that went.
Did you get to watch the special called meeting last night?
No, I didn't know about a special call. No.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. But we'll save that for another discussion.
Okay.
The TLDR is commission has a lot on their minds right now, but if any of you do have commissioners that you check in with or talk to in the next week or so, it might be useful to just see what they're thinking. But I think that we have a great T-SPLOST either way. And Daniel, have you heard anything else about, sorry, this was not really on the agenda, but as far as GDOT and the projects that they're prioritizing that we might feed into or interface with?
As part of just like their general,
Yeah, like
um,
the money we're potentially getting that's filtering down through to us.
oh yeah, as far as we don't have any updates right now. I know there's been a few conversations we're trying to work out. We sent over our priorities for I think the top three projects that are within the MTP, which that is the plan for May courts. That's basically a 50-year plan. And as we were reviewing through that list of projects, we saw that there's basically some time coming up soon where every 5 years they update the 50-year May courts plan, and anything that kind of ends up on that plan eventually filters its way down to the next 3-year plan that GDOT uses, and we work with them on it. So, when you think about the interchange improvement over at either Atlanta Highway or Oconee Street, Oconee or Lexington, exit 8 interchange, all of the work going on there, that was all within the MTP. So we went through and I, th- we discussed our different priorities. I can't remember off the top of my head where we landed on it. I believe it was pretty much the Atlanta Highway corridor. I think Hawthorne on the southern side, where it has been 3-laned, but there's still very little room for bikes, and it's still fairly dangerous there. Uh, I'm not supposed to say dangerous. Uh, it's very constricted. Um, and then I think the third one was another one of our critical corridors.
Was it
So I don't remember.
Lexington?
It might have been.
I think,
That,
yeah.
that sounds right.
Okay.
So they kind of line up nicely with the Athens in Motion um, T-SPOS 23 program. So what that means is that if those do get prioritized and we have the T-SPOS funding, rather than only building the bike and pedestrian facilities, we can really partner with GDOT to make the entire corridor safe, not just build some, bike and pedestrian facilities alongside. We can actually look at like, how do we do traffic calming and really do that corridor-wide improvement that those specific areas need. And the Atlanta Highway, I think the extents on that one was actually from the, like almost, I think maybe from Epps Bridge, or it could be from Hawthorne into West Broad, um, all the way up to like Millage. So I can't remember the extents in the MTP, but there was basically two projects that were really close to each other, and we felt like they should just be merged into one. Um, so. And then as far as other GDOT projects that are going on, we can talk more about it at the general meeting, but the West Broad roundabout at Hancock, that is about to go into public input. I've been working with a consultant. We are, even though there's only bike lanes on one of the roads coming in, which is Hancock, I wanted to make sure that we're accounting for bike and pedestrian connectivity. Obviously, we had sidewalks shown around the entire roundabout. So now we're going to actually show multi-use path around the entire roundabout. Because if we're going to go through all the trouble of like building this roundabout and putting in retaining walls, we might as well put the retaining wall where it needs to be for a future connection. And even if we don't have bike and biking facilities along West Broad and Atlanta Highway right now. I guess that's just West Broad right there. So even though we don't have biking facilities along West Broad, it doesn't mean people are not biking. That's still a very heavily traffic corridor, and we want to make sure that as you go into that roundabout, we really don't want to mess with it again after it's already been installed. So that should be within the concepts. And with that, we're basically looking for y'all's blessing and also some sort of, if you're interested, helping promote the public input, which should be, I believe, in March and April. So it goes through a lot of processes with the GDOT projects. So we're pretty, it seems like we're far in advance of it, but we're kind of hitting up on a series of deadlines leading up to that. So I'll talk more about that in the general meeting though.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. I appreciate that.
Okay.
That little update that also helped get us thinking about that for our meeting next week. And something else I'd like to consider is, and I keep meaning to look like what tier 1 projects we have that are in the West Broad neighborhood. They had, submitted a project in T-SPOS 2020 for 2023 to have T-SPOS 2023 money go to building the roundabout so they could free up the 2018 money for some infrastructure in their neighborhood. And I think that was more general infrastructure, so that may have included some other things besides bike ped stuff. But if there's some streets in West Broad that are tier 1 and the community has the interest, maybe it's possible if we get that tier 1 funding from 2023 that we could prioritize those streets and those projects. And I also feel like that they were not very expensive, but even if they were, that might be something we could consider doing.
Yeah, it looks like, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right spot. I think I am. It looks like 117, project 117 is tier 1, and that is on Hancock. Let me just see what 117 was. There's a few different projects up in there. It's hard to see in this map that I'm looking at. But I know on this, was the West Broad neighborhood, does that include the southern side as well?
What do you mean by the southern side?
So the southern side of West Broad Street, so towards Baxter.
Yeah, my sense is that I had thought the West Broad neighborhood is between Baxter and West Broad Street, and that's pretty much the boundaries, but I might be wrong there.
Okay. Um, this is going to be very hard to pick apart, but let me see if I can get zoomed into the appropriate spot. And my screen is going a little slow today, so maybe it's just the whole computer though. So I believe this purple area is probably what we're considering the West Broad neighborhood. On the northern side is Plaza coming
I think
down.
we had it, but I think we lost it.
Oh shoot.
I see a recipe.
Uh-oh. That's not what
Are
it's
you gonna cook for us, Daniel?
That's weird. Let me try that again.
Sure. I mean, one of the downsides about T-Splosh not meeting in person is that we did not get fed at all this time. Okay, now I see the plan.
Yeah, that's gonna be dinner later. Don't tell anybody. All right. So this Project 94, I believe that is actually Hancock.
Yeah,
Um, so this right here is West Broad neighborhood. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but I think you can
yeah,
see at a glance, we've got some tier one and tier two, um, as well as some greenway um,
right.
connectivity. Those are all, I think, potential projects, but
Mhm.
ultimately, I think what the intention of that project was if for them to go back and look at what the community asked for, and we'll just hopefully some of those projects that they mentioned from the community standpoint line up with one or both parts of the Athens in Motion plan in terms of one or both meaning bike or pedestrian. So um,
Okay. Yeah.
because obviously they probably wouldn't be too happy if we just came in and took that $5 million and put it into an Athens in Motion project when they just did all the work to try to free up that money, or to put it into a Greenway project or something like that, you know?
Oh, and so they actually the reason why I'm asking about it is because their project did not make it on T-Splosh 2023.
Okay,
So
okay,
I was just curious, like if there was anything that we had that was tier one, um, that could be considered. And I
well,
will say this, that, you know, when Aaron and I were on T-Splosh 2018, the idea behind the West Broad bucket of funds was not that all their bike ped stuff should just come from their special bucket. It was supposed to be an equalizer, and then they were still supposed to be considered for regular bike ped projects. But it
right,
wasn't just supposed to be like this is your bucket, that's it.
right.
But we can come back to that. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but just kind of putting some thoughts out there, especially since it looks like we will get to have some substantial investment along 78 that we really need to make it safe for everybody. And I'm very excited about that. Next, kind of in this sort of other category is complete streets that we've had a draft form for about a year, and we had talked about getting together a presentation to present to the Mayor and Commission in a work session. Um, so I think it would be ideal to do that maybe like this spring. Um, Perhaps, I don't know if we can do it in February, maybe something like March. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, with the way their deadlines are, I say the best move forward is to probably just get the presentation done as soon as we can.
Okay.
Once that's ready, then we can start getting it on the schedule, unless you want to make sure we're kind of like uh, trying to push this a little quicker, in which case I'll talk with Steven and we'll see when we can get on the next agenda, and then that'll give you a deadline to work towards.
Okay.
Which option would you prefer?
Let's let's get that presentation started and check in on it in our next meeting. But is there anyone on this committee who would be willing to look at our complete streets policy and start a presentation to the Mayor and Commission, trying to synthesize that for them? And then we could, work on it together. It would just be great if someone could get it started.
And so this is, yeah, just basically complete streets in a nutshell kind of thing. Like how long of presentation are we thinking?
We're trying to keep our presentations, they're trying to keep the presentations to the Mayor and Commission like 10 minutes or less.
Okay.
So that way there's time for questions. And the idea is that our elected officials are looking at the presentations ahead of time. So it's just, it would just be like an overview, what's, maybe comparing and contrasting the last policy, why we have a new one, the highlights, but then, they could look at it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I could work on that. And that would need to be by March probably.
Yeah, so I guess get it started and then we could look at it together and give you additional resources to help you as needed.
Yeah, definitely.
Let me know if you want help with that or want me to look at a draft and.
Oh, I certainly will, because multiple heads here better than one. And I'm sure there's gonna be things that y'all are gonna catch that I'll miss. So different priorities. So, but yeah, I can start on that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Aaron.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll have maybe make a note of that in our minutes that Aaron's going to start the presentation to be presented at a future work session to be determined for the Mayor and Commission. Mark is available to help, and we'll look at a draft version at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. And it doesn't.
I'm not a great visual designer, so I'll certainly welcome input on that too, and will not you'll not hurt my ego if you think you can come up with better graphic design and whatnot.
I know, that's great. Thank you. All right, so that covers the items in the other section. So now we get to move on to the main topic of our agenda, which is bike ordinances. And last month, Cole, who has joined us again, presented us with his synthesization. I don't know, I got words today. His synthesis of many college town and bike friendly communities, and took a look at what ordinances were out there. So we have that spreadsheet, and then Mark, you had allowed us to rank those, right? You're the one who started the
Yeah,
rank.
I appreciate that. I don't know if anybody's actually done it, but.
Oh yeah, no, it's in there. I think nearly everyone got to it who had access to it. So thank you. And there's some great notes in there. I think John Devine got in there.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I will pull that up, in fact. Move. Dun, dun. So it's linked in the agenda. And then it's under the ranking tab. So here are all of our names. And so there's a couple ways we could approach this. We could decide to clear up any that we want to. We could, there were a couple that we were not really into and thought should be removed from consideration. We could start from the ones that were highest priority and maybe pick out a couple from there. Now, Daniel, what do you think would be most useful as far as moving forward?
Well, some of these, there were several comments from John saying I think this should be removed entirely. I think some of those actually were our existing bike laws. So, I don't know if do we want to discuss maybe starting at like all of the ones that we currently have on the books and just like run through those? Or do we want to not worry about the ones we currently have and focus on adding more ordinances? Um,
Well, I think if
Yeah,
they're
what
on
would,
the books and we rated it low, then maybe we should look at it. If we rated it high and it's on the books, don't worry about it.
okay.
I guess, I don't know. Just
I'm
look
sorry to
at-
interrupt. Did this go out recently for review? I'm sorry, I missed this.
Yeah, I might not have known who was on the committee or not, because I see your name isn't listed here.
Okay, no problem. I just want to make sure I didn't miss an email, so thanks.
I'm just adding your name right there in case you want
all
to.
right, yeah,
appreciate
sorry
it.
about that, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah, so one means that we're not into the ordinance, and five five means that we think it should be a high priority.
I'll just say this is not an ACC Gov document for
It's
the,
not
the
in
live stream.
so
Well, maybe just start at the top.
and we do have, how many do we have? There's 44 here. So I wonder, I'm gonna maybe make another column. Oh, insert it here.
I mean, we could look at kind of an average. But some were 5 and some were 1.
Mhm.
So I don't know, if we want to look at that, if we want to average
Yeah.
it.
Well, I think for this one, I added the comment that this should be more of a goal and not an ordinance. I spoke with Steven and he and I both agreed that it seems weird to create an ordinance that we would be breaking the law if we don't add a certain amount. And I think what this is actually, like I went and I looked at the original ordinance that was being discussed here, and I believe they had a section of guaranteed funding from year to year, and that can be used towards various types of transportation projects. And within that ordinance, it references that plan and it says this plan will be implemented with the following kind of ideas, basically. And then one of those things was adding an average of 1 mile of bike facilities annually. So because we don't have like a solid funding source in our general budget for building new stuff, we didn't feel like from a staff perspective that is something we should pursue.
All right, so I'm going to say remove from consideration.
Is
And
everybody good with that?
Which one is that again? Sorry.
it's the top one in row 3, and this is adding an
Okay.
average of 1 mile of bike facilities annually. So, and Mark, thank you for going in there and putting in the averages. That's helpful. Ban on bike racing. I'm going to also, it looks like none of us really think that's a priority so far. And so I'll recommend removing. Next, bell required on bike.
I was gonna say I've got a very loud air horn on my bike because I think it's very important for notifying cars that I'm there sometimes, especially at intersections. I don't think a bell really does a whole lot, but it's not a bad thing to have. I just don't think it should be required.
Yeah, in Europe, everybody has them because they're riding on multi-use paths and they're interacting with pedestrians, but it would never happen here. It's fun,
Okay.
Europeans think we're nuts because we don't use them. They get angry if you don't have a bell or use it when you're riding in Europe. So.
Let's come back to bicycle definition because I feel like we could spend a lot of time on bicycle definition and the reasonable speed one. So that's in rows 6 and 7. I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay. If I could just say a comment on that first one, the definition, that's one that we currently have, and that was implemented, I think, within the last few years, because essentially there were some multi-use path ordinances that banned non-motorized vehicles, or it banned motorized vehicles. So I think by defining an e-bike as a bicycle, or that would allow for e-bikes to be on the greenway and not be breaking the law technically. I was not involved in that. I just knew about it kind of from my boss and my previous position because that was kind of covered by leisure services. So we could revisit it if and I think I agree. Like we can have a bigger conversation about that. But I just wanted to kind of give that context to it.
Right. Yeah. And it's, yes, all in the code. But yeah, let's come back to that one. Bicycle passenger regulations. Okay, sorry, there's someone at my door.
No worries.
I'll have to get back to them. Okay.
I feel like for two, we could just like there's not really a need for that because the comment says state law seems adequate.
Basically, like can't ride on handlebars, can't, it's got to be like a actual seat kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was saying that like if the child is under age 1, I think you can't carry them in certain ways.
Interesting. It's kind of like a car seat law almost, but for bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is one of our high priority ones. It relates to safety. Bicyclist is a vulnerable road user. And I'm not sure who wrote this, but I agree. Would be nice to have additional protections against hostility and aggressive driving, but what would this look like? I have heard from ACCPD that if you can call them if there's someone who is behaving aggressively towards you, and report it. I don't know what happens from there. But they might have come to speak at one of these meetings, I think, actually. Trying to remember, but
I'd say that's a high priority. I mean, apart from I think this is one part of it, right? So you define the vulnerable user, cyclist as a vulnerable road user, and then that opens up a conduit for more laws in the future. That potentially, a greater fine if you're, because I think, if you hit a cyclist, the idea here is that it's an increased fine for hitting a cyclist, and so you're less likely to do it again. Unfortunately, like because they are a vulnerable user, it's not always, an easy thing to recover from a cyclist standpoint. So ideally there would be some prevention stuff, but that can also pair nicely with our education in safety corridor program. So, as we implement safety corridors in the future, there's going to be a lot of education materials that we end up generating and just essentially educating the public that, hey, by the way, like cyclists, here, this is a vulnerable road user. These are the people that are vulnerable road users. Increased fines and other things like that, and punishments. I think depending on depending on what we end up putting in there, it could be a very long, drawn out situation. So if we start off with just defining it, then maybe that's a quick process, like 6 months. If you're getting into the more advanced stuff, then you have to start getting PD, and obviously we do want to get PD involved on that, but just don't want to bite off more than we can chew right at the beginning.
okay. Yeah. Bike connections required in vehicle parks. I did paste this. I didn't go back and look at what this was in reference to. What this is for is RV parks. And this came out of Columbus is one of the places, and there was one other location, Chapel Hill. I don't think we don't have too many RV parks. In Athens, I think there was one on North Avenue. I don't even know if that one is still there anymore. So I don't know if this is really a high priority. So it's pretty specific. Anyone want to
No
argue
idea
with
what
me
that
on
means.
that? I don't mean to say argue, but disagree.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. Bike routes must be maintained during construction, and it scored pretty highly for us. There's a, it's nice to be living in a place where there is a lot going on. Like there's a ton of construction just in my neighborhood. But it's not clear to me what the bike routes are supposed to be. And I am kind of navigating that as best I can, including riding the wrong way down certain streets. Um,
And just like we saw at that racetrack construction on Lexington, where they just shut down the greenway for months, it seemed like while they were, I remember the website, and they just said, oh, it's closed till further notice, just because of that, possibly related to that construction. So that we don't want to see too much of that, any of that really.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it definitely it needs to go through a process where it needs to, like, we don't want just construction companies to be able to close down something because they're in the middle of working on a project. So in the same way that we do with sidewalks, where you have to maintain the sidewalk connection during construction, the caveat there is sometimes you do have to close down a crosswalk or a sidewalk, in which case you have to provide like detour signage. And so,
But I think minimizing the
yes.
obstruction, because the example was great of the racetrack. I mean, it was shut down for months, and the vast majority of the time it could have easily been open. I mean, I'd ride over there, and it could have. It was very annoying. They could have probably gotten away with shutting it down for a few weeks or a month and then reopened it. But this is not a priority for the construction folks.
right. It's a little bit all over the place. And I think the Firefly Murmur Trestle Trail Creek Crossing has been really great. That construction is right there, but they've been minimally closing that switchback, and
Yep.
it's been pretty great. So we have good examples. We have
Yeah.
examples where it's good, it's working, it's minimal disruption, and then examples where the disruption is just needlessly too long and there's not a detour provided. So we need some standardization there, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I think currently the sidewalk thing goes through traffic engineering, and the project managers have to work with traffic engineering, and they have certain rules. And so doing that same type of thing for bike lanes, where it's left open as much as possible.
Bikes not allowed on natural surface trails unless indicated otherwise. Do we really need this?
No.
It's a parks ordinance. I don't think we're gonna have any. That's something to bring up with leisure services, and I believe they added it recently. So
I will say, from a hiking standpoint, a lot of times on narrow trails, bikes and hiking isn't very compatible. When you've got, just the difference in speed and sight lines can be pretty dangerous. So, I mean, yeah, I do see the point in why it's addressed in a lot of areas.
But I also wouldn't want, I agree with that. I see the point for sure, but also I wouldn't want to preclude an unpaved path, particularly in a watershed or,
Right.
something that's designed to be a multi-use path, but
Mhm.
not necessarily with cement or asphalt.
yeah, so I went and looked at that specific ordinance, and um it does mention, unless it's designed for that purpose. And so
Okay, good,
um
perfect.
it says prohibited on natural surface trails unless expressly designated as bicycle. So,
Okay.
and what generally we do, or what we did in leisure services, was you've got your trailhead signage, and typically there's a no biking symbol if that's part of the rules for that sign. So,
Right, like Cook's Trail, yeah.
yeah, Cook's Trail, any of the nature center trails, Lakeside, Buckeye. That's a bigger conversation.
Hmm.
Mount Sorba, they're working on some things with leisure services, but one of the things that we discussed before pandemic was potentially doing some redesign of the trails over at Sandy Creek Park to invite mountain bikers to have more of a cross-country mountain biking experience instead of um, kind of the downhill experience that you get at Virginia Walker Park. Um, but right now, even if you are a cyclist and you go on those trails, they're so rutted out and muddy, and there's a lot of damage to them because it's like a horse trail. I don't think it would be a good experience. Um, so we just want to make sure that people are being safe on those.
So, okay, so what are some good notes to leave about this one? Because we already do have a law about it. So are we saying that it is a priority, like keep the law as is, do more with the law, or we're not going to give it any attention? What are we thinking here?
What if we just plan to meet with leisure services to discuss any concerns with the limitations? Like, are there examples of trails within our parks where, if it's not designated with a symbol that you can bike here, then technically it's against the ordinance to bike there. And so
Mhm.
I don't know that Bishop Park has any bike symbols. So like technically you couldn't bike on the path, even though we consider it, wide enough to accommodate. So it might just be worth meeting with them to discuss um, if there's a concern there and how it impacts their operation.
Yeah, because it's not a problem until overzealous, maybe police officers start handing out tickets when, it's not really the intent of the law. But I mean, I do see the point of it in definitely a lot of places, but yeah, want to sort out some of the minutia of this.
I think if you
Yeah.
don't want people to bike on someplace, you need to tell them that they can't bike on it, because it's not fair to people for them to expect that the default is no, and that they need to review the ordinances. Like, people will read a sign most likely, but they're not going to like know what the county's default is.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I'm worried
Yeah.
a little bit. I'm thinking about some of our informal trails that are along right of ways that Athens-Clarke County owns, like maybe
Yeah, like
trails that are
I think
along the green.
open the section again because I'm pretty sure this is underneath parks.
Okay, so but I mean, the Greenway is considered a linear park. So what about trails that intersect with or are parallel to the Greenway that are on like ACC land that are now
So
service?
um well the Greenway itself, if it's within an area um like on the new section where we just have an easement, that's actually on UGA land, and this doesn't apply to that because you can see chapter 1-10 is parks. So
Mhm.
this is just motor vehicles and bicycles within parks. So um, if you're thinking the dirt loop or something like that's not, I don't think that is applied with this ordinance.
Okay.
I got to go get ready for another meeting, my 3 o'clock, so.
Okay, thanks for dropping in, Mark.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
It could just be worth, because so the way that the ordinances work and our rules for the park work is so we have to reference the ordinance on our rule signs that this park rule applies to. And so it gets kind of complicated, and I think it's worth looking at because that's a pretty broad statement. Um, I do know that the sign budget for the entire department is $6,000 a year, which is not enough to, like, if you, like, ideally we would go in and replace all of the signs and make sure everything's up to date. And I was in the process of doing that at one point early on, but we ended up, park planning got reallocated somewhere else. And so it becomes a really difficult thing to, for every single trail to put a standard trailhead marker because you end up dealing with the politics between the different facilities who, you've got facilities that want to be special and they don't want to have that style sign or they don't like that icon. And so everyone wants to have input. And so when you have, there's I think 25 different parks and different divisions for each one. And yeah, and Scott, with your comment, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if there's a rule against Bishop Park biking. I feel like it's okay, but I've never seen anything that had like you can bike here, and so it could be that's like a great. I think that's a great reason why we need to ask more, like get more info on that.
All right. We have quite a few more to go through. Bikes shall not be equipped with a siren or a whistle. I don't think we
disagree with that one more.
Yeah.
Just having the purpose-built air horn, it saved me from so many incidents where I'm riding in traffic and somebody starts to encroach in front of me into the bike lane, and I can give them a quick blast of the air horn and let them know that I'm there.
Yeah.
Not aggressive, but just it's like loud pipes save lives on motorcycles. Well, similar way of thought with bicycles.
Yeah, I should probably get me one of those. All right, one that ranked pretty highly for many of us is bikes will have right of way at intersections. And then Taylor, you were concerned about instituting different sets of rules for cyclists and drivers.
Yeah, like I guess I also don't see, how does that look when you have the right of way to intersection, but also like considering like when I'm biking around, I want to be like visible and predictable, and it's nice when I get to a four-way stop and the other person like tries to wave me ahead, and like, oh, you're on a bike, you go ahead, but then that person might want to let me go ahead, but then the other two people at the intersection might not, and I really just want to be treated like another car so that I know what to expect and I know what people expect of me. And then considering like this town gets a huge influx of people several times a year who don't live here and don't know what like the special rules are in this county. So I think that as much as we can, be clear what the rules are and consistent, then that helps. But I'm open to being persuaded otherwise.
I feel the same way, just because, yeah, it's just clears up so much confusion, and I guess the only way that there's a whole separate thing with the what Idaho stops, but I think that's a separate issue. We've talked about that one before, but that actually has a reason with traffic lights not changing because of the sensor. But I think in most cases, I want to be treated like a car in terms of the road rules.
And we do have, I think, another ordinance where we talk about that, where it says, cyclists are treated as drivers, or all traffic laws apply to cyclists. So that would probably need to be amended if we did something like this. What I was thinking of with this ordinance was that idea that like bike boxes are in front, and so if you're coming up on an intersection, your bike lane goes all the way to the front and then you get moved into priority, and maybe just that infrastructure makes you the priority. But I was driving one day and we were at a traffic light and there was no bike lane, but a cyclist rode up between all of the cars to the front, in the same way that you would with a bike box. And my passenger was like, "Is that illegal?" And I was like, "Actually, I don't know. Like, there's no bike infrastructure here, so I mean,
So I mean, frankly, I've ridden up, same thing where I've got space to go around. I'll go up beside cars, but I don't get in front of them, I guess. They actually rode in front of the vehicles then?
yeah. Well, they got up to the front so they could, I guess, turn. And I mean, that makes sense to me if you're at a signalized intersection.
Yeah.
I think the four-way stop thing, I would say 100%. It's, the order that you arrive, like you follow as if you're a vehicle in that example. Um, But I guess my concern with it is like, do we wait for the infrastructure to exist so that the bikes are like able to ride within the law, or do we make laws that make it a little easier to ride even if we haven't gotten to the infrastructure yet? And I don't know if that's a good way to phrase it, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm not for changing this. I like the infrastructure. It with the bike boxes in terms of getting, going around traffic with the bike lanes, but it just seems like it could be more issue with conflicts um, without with changing the law without the infrastructure in this particular case. That's my opinion.
yeah.
So it's some good discussion going on here, and it seems like there is some clarity and some further discussion that needs to happen here. And I see where everyone is coming from. And Scott, I did watch that illegal courtesies video that y'all put out, and I agree there. I also agree that in some ways I do want the law to be simpler. Like it's just easier to say a bike is a vehicle. But then to Daniel's point, in a lot of cases, we don't have the infrastructure for people to feel safe. So what are some ways that we can produce an increased sense of safety in a blanketed way without having to wait for infrastructure to be built out? So I think we can come back to this one. This is a very interesting one worth further discussion.
Maybe when you're talking about like what can we do in the meantime before infrastructure is built out, maybe there's some sort of way where we can how you can define a vulnerable road user to give additional consideration to those people that could kind of fit in that spot. I don't know what the answer is, but it seems like maybe that's an opportunity. Also, I'd like to say that the illegal courtesies would be a really good band name.
That's what I said. That's what I said on Facebook. I posted, I'm like, illegal courtesies, man. It's my next band. All right. Brakes required on bikes. I don't really feel like we need to wade into this. It's covered by Georgia law. What do y'all think?
No big
No, we're
deal.
good.
Okay. Remove. Also, it seems like there's not a lot of interest in cannot carry article with two hands riding a bike. I don't
All
really.
right, just real quick, back. This is the first time I've seen this. Back to the bike brakes required. Is that a Georgia law now that you must, or is it on the books that you must have brakes?
So this is going to be weird. Okay, Cole, can you explain to her how to get it so that that works? Oh, you're muted.
So you go to Google and then you look up Georgia LexisNexis. And then you click it, and then it should like bring you to another link, and then you can click on that link, and then you'll have access to the Georgia code. And then when you go back to the worksheet and click on one of the links, it'll work. It's like really weird.
Sorry, while that's going on, is this saved in the shared drive, or because I didn't get to. I'm frustrated I didn't get to see this before.
It's linked to from the agenda, is it?
Yeah, are you able to get into it from the agenda? And yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Aaron. I'm not sure if we
That's
did
okay.
put this in there.
So in this case, operator.
Two hands.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So right
Oh.
here, the brake thing. When able to operate and make the brake wheel skid on dry level there. I don't know if this is referring to like a fixie where your brake is in the
Yeah.
pedals, but like I feel like that counts as a brake. Because it says it'll enable the operator to make the brake wheel skid. So if you're pedaling and you stop pedaling and the wheel stops, then that's a brake. It fulfills the definition, so.
Okay.
Oh, and actually, yeah, this is not on. It's not linked on the agenda to me, but yeah, whenever you have a chance to share it with me, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, it's this one, Aaron.
I
It's
know,
just in.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it comes up for me. I should say it's there, but it doesn't have me. I can't actually.
Oh.
You can't
Edit.
comment on
Okay,
it.
it's the second sheet. Okay, got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for helping us make sure that you could get that.
Thanks.
Okay, so what's this one referring to?
The cannot ride a bike not on a.
The two hands, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah, so like if you're carrying a package, you can't like not have any hands on the handlebars.
How's this factor with
Okay.
unicycles?
Okay. Guess
I don't know.
I
Never
guess a
thought about
bike
that.
is two-wheeled, right? So this only applies to two-wheeled vehicles. I guess.
Yeah, but your unicycle would probably be going against the bike, the brakes required. But
If you
perhaps
can skid your wheels on a unicycle, I am very impressed with your ability to brake without falling over.
I don't think we need to wade into this deal.
yeah.
I mean, there's state law for it. I don't feel like we need to either push for this more enforcement on a local level or not enforce it. And if anyone wants to disagree. All right, cannot ride a bike not on a seat. So cargo bikes. So the idea here would be that locally we would have an ordinance that would say you could ride a cargo bike back seat.
So what's a cargo bike?
It's got
A trailer, or at least a. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's like you usually got like a little bed, right? For hauling, and I think just with is it under the? Maybe Scott, you can explain this better, but because the fact is you're working so hard with it, you're not really sitting down.
Basically, if there's not a seat for you on the bike, if you're riding with two people on a tandem, it makes sense. There's a seat there. If your kid has a seat that's attached to the rear of your bike, you got two people with two seats, and that's cool. But when you get people riding on handlebars or just like grabbing onto the bike and just sort of holding on, that's dangerous and illegal.
What do pegs count as?
No, that's not a seat.
Yeah, okay.
It just
Those are for
for
doing
the
tricks
law, it
and
says no bicycle shall be used to carry more persons at one time than the number for which it was designed and equipped. So like I think technically pegs could be like considered equipped. I don't know.
No, yeah, I guess what Scott's saying is that those are designed for tricks. They're not designed for carrying. So I think that, I mean, so can we go back to the list?
Yeah.
Where did the voting fall on this one?
I don't think this is a problem.
Yeah.
Cannot ride bike, no, let's see. So really what this is saying is you can't have more people than the bike is designated for. And that's part of the Georgia law, so I don't think we need to worry about it. I think it's fine the way it is. Right?
Yeah. I don't love it. I don't like having a law about this.
I think it would get really tricky to, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like it would be very difficult for us to create an ordinance that undoes a Georgia law. Is
Yeah.
that like it's one thing if it's filling a gap, but
Right.
if that is a Georgia law, then
Yeah, I agree. It's another battle for another time.
yeah,
Willing to die on that hill.
improvements.
We're about halfway through, and I do have to leave at 3:15.
Okay.
So maybe that we just get through half of this now. So city improvements must comply with bike mobility programs. So this is probably complete streets, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Covered by complete streets, which we
I
have a
guess we need to find out if a ordinance would be needed or if the complete streets policy is enough.
All right. Considerations of bike routes during city planning. High priority.
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm curious to see. Let's just explore it more, because I'm not sure. This gets into the whole like the same as earlier, where it was like required amount of mileage. I mean, we do want to make sure we're considering that, but by having a full-time bike head coordinator, I feel like that is doing that. But in a lot of ways, the ordinances are so that you can guarantee in the future that this will continue and not just, someone retires or something. That's conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll explore that more. The reason why I think no one had prioritized this row here, dedication to public ways, is because there were some questions on it. And so I pulled this from Eugene, Oregon's code that Cole had linked. So I think the idea is a bike boulevard potentially along non-traditional roads, because it does mention alleys. I'm not sure if it's more than that, but that was the one place where it was referenced was in Oregon.
So as a condition of any development, for now, since we only have a few minutes left, just say look into it more, because that may be something that would benefit us in the planning develop, like PD process, plan development process, right?
Yeah.
We can talk with planning about that.
Okay. We'll do, I guess, one more, which is driver must yield to bicyclist in bike lane. There's some Georgia code. Taylor, you note that bicyclists must be reminded of this. Driver must not enter bike lanes. More important is what John had said. how can we be more clear on this, or what can we do locally?
Maybe we just add in a local that also says driver must not enter bike lane. Maybe. We're about to, I'm working on the no parking in bike lanes, so that only counts as parking though. And I think it also gets kind of tricky with some of our bike lanes. Like one I've noticed is when you're turning off of West Broad Street onto Pulaski, and you're turning right onto Pulaski, the bike lane lines are completely gone because the way that that curve is designed, it's very difficult to, you basically have to turn into and almost like drive into oncoming traffic, if people stop there in order for you to not be in the bike lane. And so I've just noticed that when I turn there, there's that particular lane gets worn down. And so, and then people tend to drive up in that bike lane all of the way. And so in some cases, our bike lanes are just designed in a way where it's very difficult for the cars to stay out of them.
Yeah, and right in front of Little Kings, like I think that the verbiage to yield is more appropriate than saying the driver can't enter, because in several spots around town, and that one, like if there's a right turn lane, the bike lane is between the rightmost straight ahead lane and the turn right lane, so drivers have to cross the bike lane in some places if they want to turn right.
I think a lot of it's just yielding to cyclists. I mean, I've gotten yelled at saying, you're just a bike, and then when people didn't stop and pulled out in front of me when I was in the bike lane, things like that. And obviously, there's a lot of bad drivers out there, but I think just more clear verbiage on that would be helpful.
It could be focused around solid versus dash line,
Okay, so there's a lot of potential ordinances to go through here, and we got through about half of them. So do we want to hold off on any next steps until we've had a chance to review all of them as a committee, or should we have any action items related to what notes we have made on the ordinance we've gone through?
Thinking wait till we've reviewed them all.
Okay, so we'll come back to this.
I think what we could do is, once we've reviewed them all, we can put them into different buckets. Some of them are things we could go ahead and get started on, in terms of information gathering and coming up with recommendations. Others are things where maybe we pick a series of ordinances to have leisure services come and talk with us, and
Okay.
we and then maybe another time for planning. So it could be an ongoing, thing for each of our monthly meetings. So we could have a group of leisure services ordinances and a group of ones to discuss with planning. One of the ones that we've talked about, and I think we were maybe alluded to in that one where it says part of the plan development is in the way that we can require businesses or new development to build sidewalks, how can we wrap that in with bike facilities? So if there is a planned multi-use path in front of their business, they should have to build a multi-use path. And yes, and providing bike parking, I think that is definitely something we could explore. I don't even know if we'll see if that's in the list, but maybe add that
It's
at
on
the
the
bottom.
list.
Okay, good. Because yeah.
Covered bike parking that's visible and not too close to a wall. All right, y'all. So it's 3:14. Thank you for your time. So we need to figure out when we'll meet again. Maybe the second Wednesday in February. We have these meetings roughly second or third Wednesday of the month. I'm trying to see what else is on there, if that's a Greenway meeting or not. It doesn't look like it's a Greenway meeting.
There's a Prince Avenue user group meeting until 4:30.
Okay, so, oh, that's right. Well, we usually have this meeting from 5 to 6:15. Would that be okay for you, Daniel?
Okay, so our bowling night's changed. So bowling night is now Wednesday at 6:15.
Okay, sure.
So if we did like 4:30 to 6, I don't know, that doesn't get,
No,
I could
we
just
just need
eat
an hour and
there.
15 minutes.
Okay. Um, yeah, do y'all want to stick with the second Wednesday?
That's Wednesday, February 9th.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
That works for me.
That works for me.
So Daniel, are you saying that you could do a meeting right after that, your 4:30, right after that meeting from 4:30 to like 5:45?
Yeah, if we end at 5:45, then, because the whole reason we moved it to Wednesday is because the restaurant wasn't open on Mondays, and so it was really difficult to like get off work and then try to eat before getting to bowling, and so a
No.
lot of times I just wouldn't eat.
So now you're not going to be able to eat, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, I'll eat at the bowling alley because they're open on Wednesdays. So,
Okay.
and it's only for 10 weeks, so it'll just be a couple meetings, a couple of our nights. This will be good. It's fine.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So we'll meet Wednesday, February 9th, 4:30 to 5:45. We'll pick back up with looking over the bike ordinances. We'll take a look at presentation for Mayor and Commission at a future meeting for Complete Streets, our policy that we wrote a while back. Thanks, Aaron, for working on that. And hopefully then we'll know what the T-SPLOS list looks like, or pretty close to it, because the mayor and commission are supposed to finalize it by then, make the call for the referendum shortly after. So,
Nice.
all right, y'all. Well, I thank you for your time. I do have to dip off, but Athens in Motion commissioners, which is Aaron and Daniel, see y'all Tuesday, and we'll have our annual meeting then. So Cole and Scott and Taylor, you're welcome to tune in to that. We're basically going to look at the year 2021 review and everything that we accomplished and did and all that good stuff. So feel free to tune in. All right.
All right.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good weekend. Bye.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.